Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Pielka. Today is October 18, 2022. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with Courtney Sell. Courtney, where in the heck are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from North Carolina right now. I'm
North
taking a,
Carolina.
I'm taking a break. I just screened. I had a big New York City premiere of my documentary Hollywood. It was the first East Coast premiere, and now I'm taking a break from New York to decompress in North Carolina with family for a week or two.
How cool. Congratulations. First
Thank you.
question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
Oh, love.
It's the answer I get the most.
Oh yeah, and laughter.
Ooh, I like that. Good follow-up. Too good. What is your favorite form of information? How it comes into you?
Meditation, easily. Meditation and being in nature. Clearing your mind while being in nature. Take a lot of
Really,
hikes. Yeah.
really good. Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
For inner growth, for to develop and increase the inner awareness and inner consciousness.
Really good. Do you think this need or want to collect information is more innate or more invented?
Innate, I would say. I think it's a natural part of the human experience. I sure there's going to be curiosity and interest, but I think the obtaining wisdom and knowledge is an innate part of the human experience.
Beautiful. Do thoughts create emotions?
Yeah, yeah, I would say so. Or emotions can also create thoughts. It goes back or forth.
I get that often. Is thinking more innate or more invented?
Thinking, I would say, would be more inventive because our egos can get in the way, and our imaginations can get in the way, and imagine and certain ideas can come from overthinking. I mean, there's definitely going to be some form of thought movement going on in our brains, but I think that it's definitely a lot of our thoughts are inventive, I would say.
Fill in the blank, Courtney. I don't know what I think until I.
I don't know, I think until I think on it.
Think on it. Let me tell you, Courtney, I'm glad you're taking time because there's no rush here. If you want to think and, ponder before you answer, that's totally fine. Don't
I love
feel
it.
pressured. So you
No,
you
I love
got you get it right off the bat.
it.
Yeah, because McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. And Joan Didion said, I don't think until what I know until I write it.
Sure.
Can humans think without language?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
Chomsky says a language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is.
Mhm.
What do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down?
I think that's where the creative process would come in. I think that's where creative development and creative inspiration would come in. I think you can communicate through creative drive and inspiration without, language. That, I guess, that's a language in itself. But if we're talking about, semantics and actual like speaking, but I would say that is where art would essentially come from, and music. I would say music would be a big part of that as well. Um, And
So,
Chomsky is the one who, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but Furious Green, or was it the color Furious Green? He has that phrase that's kind of word jumble, but it's perfectly phrased. I think that was Chomsky. I would have to look at it, but it's a favorite Chomsky moment of mine. I'm kind of
Cool.
messing it up. Yeah.
But it's interesting because I says, what do you do when language breaks down? You're saying make art or make music. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I would say so. If language breaks down, I would say music is probably the strongest.
Yeah.
Music can carry emotion. Music can uplift or bring down. Music is a language in itself, and I would say that would be the most important thing. If language ever broke down, music would be where I would head to.
Good. Your observations of people in general. I know it's both and it depends. Stupid question, but are we more feeling beings or more thinking beings?
I would have to say at this point in time and where we are in this collective culture right now, I would say, unfortunately, we're thinking beings opposed to perhaps being feeling beings way back when. But I think we've gotten to the point where our egos are so big, and I think we're unfortunately overthinking beings.
Yeah. Bridget Bardot says, I don't think when I make love. I'm like, good luck. You know, you're doing the most sensuous thing. And, you know, you turn off your thinking. That's like high aspiration. But I'm not so much a meditator per se. I would say, like when I'm riding my bike, it's a form of meditation.
Right.
You have already brought up meditation. What do they mean when they say, okay, don't think about thinking? You know, how they introduce, you know, how sometimes they introduce the practice of meditation.
Yeah.
Is that true? Like
It's
you
kind
say,
of like a riddle, I would say. I think that's the fun part. And I know Ram Dass has given lectures about this before, and you can find him on YouTube, where he talks about people who are trying to meditate, and while they're trying to meditate, they're trying not to think, and it's destroying their meditative practice because they're working so hard into not thinking. And so it's kind of this like vicious circle. And so I'm not a great meditator myself. I try, but I definitely have an overactive mind. But I think what they mean is just allowing your thoughts to go where they will, and just, you know, kind of just allow it, opposed to trying to push them away and ignore them and deny them. But that's like a funny thing for me, where if you go into a room with a bunch of people who are group meditating and you see that one person who seems really frustrated because they believe that they're continually thinking and they don't want to be, I think that's great.
it's funny because when I worked for George Carlin, we got a flyer in the mail and it had a line on it that I repeat 1 million times a year. I'm trying to get more control over my spontaneity. You know, it's sort of like that. I'm trying really hard to not think, you know.
Right, exactly.
These are two questions from Alan Turing, 1950s. Is thinking a function of the soul?
I would say partially. I mean, one has to think to survive, and I would say so. I would say it's a big part, because it's a part of the human experience, and one needs to think to, you know, get through this experience. Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, I'm always trying to invent new questions. That's almost like a good new question. Does one have to think to survive?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's the second Turing question is, can machines think?
Yes.
Yeah.
We're learning that more and more nowadays.
Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
That's interesting. I've switched. The former when I was a young adult, but now almost getting into my 40s, means a lot more to me than happiness.
Yeah. Does the brain more detect consciousness or create consciousness? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're detecting it?
Detects. That's what I would think. That's my personal opinion. I would say it
Yeah.
detects. It's always there. The
Yeah.
collective consciousness and the big consciousness is always there, and it just takes it takes us to tune in and tap in to get to that. But it's always there, so it's detecting for sure. That's what I would say. That's my answer.
Yeah. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Light.
Audre Lorde.
I answered that too quickly. That's a tricky one. That's because I know, what is it like? We have over 11,000 thoughts a second or something like that that go through our brain.
Wow.
Some crazy number, and we only can detect, a specific amount of them. And so I don't know. I might have spoke too soon. Maybe thought is the right answer.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I'd say about 60 to 70% say light.
Yeah.
And I am fishing for questions that reinforce my beliefs, but there is no, I will go, after you said light, or after you said thought, I would go, well, Courtney, there's no right or wrong answers to any of these questions, but that one you got right. Because
well, it took me time. I had to backtrack.
Yeah, but that was cool. You backtracked because this is like, when I asked my mom, I said, can I interview you? She said, yeah, but all my answers tomorrow might be different. And it's totally okay because I'm not holding you to these, like, so Audre Lorde, the poet, said, you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Rainer responded and said, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
Uprooting and altering old habits, thought forms, or patterns. Changing up, I would say. Altering and always making a maneuver and always making either subtle or drastic changes within oneself.
It's amazing. Really good. What new toy do you suggest?
Do you like in a physical play, like just
you can put it in the context you want. It can be non-physical or physical.
A skateboard.
My favorite piece of art ever is, do you know the painting by Marcel Duchamp, Nude Descending a Staircase?
Oh yeah.
There's a shot that looks just like that, and it's a kid skateboarding, and it goes, great. It says, dude descending a staircase.
I actually would like to have that image on a skateboard deck painted.
Oh, wouldn't that be cool?
Deck. Yeah.
Duchamp on a skateboard. That's it. in advance of a broken, the piece he did with the snow shovel?
No, I don't.
Okay, actually. All he did was hang a snow shovel, and then the title of the piece was "In Advance of a Broken Arm." So you all you do is you hang a skateboard on the wall, and you put "In Advance of a Broken Arm." That's what you call the piece, What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Everything.
Wow. Everything. Well, narrow it down to like one or two top things.
Well, I'm not going to talk politics here, but let's just say the way of the world. And here it is. Actually, here's something that's rather philosophical in the sense. During the pandemic and during lockdown, I very much thought that the world would come out on the other side a lot more in unity for what we had gone through, and more respectful to each other, and more spent a lot of time alone to think and contemplate and figure stuff out, both personally and in society. And what we're seeing now is it's the complete opposite. So I overthink that kind of thing a lot, that type of how it kind of failed.
Back to nature, man. It was cold. I'd walk down the street and there was no cars and animals were running loose in the streets. And I go, are we in fucking heaven or what?
I remember that. I was walking down Franklin Avenue when I was filming Hollywood. I was going to a film shoot in Griffith Park, and a coyote walked past me, and I saw a tumbleweed. And I was like, what the fuck is this? I was in the middle of Hollywood, and I saw a coyote and a tumbleweed.
Yeah, I love when people name streets in Hollywood like everybody knows at Franklin, because do you know what Betty Davis said when she was asked, what advice do I have for up and coming actresses and actors?
Something about Fountain or something, right?
Take Fountain.
Take Fountain, yeah. And there's a mural of her saying that somewhere in Hollywood that I passed by.
Oh, that's great.
Sunset.
Yeah, take Fountain. So Marshall McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound, the poet, that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, so we might learn to cope with what we don't like about the inventions. So, Courtney, I asked you the question McLuhan probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
Fear, I would say, is a big part of it. Ignorance would be a big part of it.
Yeah.
People who don't appreciate or can't tap into the importance and the significance and the sacredness of some of the work that is being broadcast. I think laziness has a big part to do with it. Maybe they don't want to take the time to really explore and get in depth with it. Again, that's just my thoughts on it, but yeah. One of my favorite filmmakers, by the way, is a 1960s avant-garde filmmaker named Hollis Frampton. And he actually worked, he used to visit Ezra Pound in jail every single day when Ezra Pound was in jail in the 40s. And there's some funny books written about that.
Oh, no, Hollis Frampton's my hero, man.
He's one of my all-time faves.
He's about the only... Him and whatever his name is, the guy who changed his name, George Landau, the only ones that had a sense of humor. You know? Oh, there's a couple, but
George Kuchar too. George Kuchar.
Oh, George Kuchar, yeah. But Hollis was amazing,
and Jack Smith. Jack Smith.
Oh, Jack Smith too. We could go on and on, but Pound was also visited by Marshall McLuhan.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And Stan Brakhage came out of Pound and Gertrude Stein.
Yeah, he was Stan Brakhage was gifted a Pound book, I believe, by Hollis Frampton, and it got him into it. Yeah.
It's like shows to go you. If you're a poet in America and you're affecting a lot of people like Ezra Pound, they'll throw you in fucking jail, man. They'll throw you in the nut hole, man. I made it. So this goes good. Do artists have moral obligation?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that goes with the idea as well in being a filmmaker and having gone through so many different genres. Now I'm primarily documentary, but the whole exploitative, genre, people who, shock for shock's sake and the exploitation stuff. It's fun. It's fun to watch with your friends, drink beers with and laugh at. But I mean, I think there is a moral obligation that the work that one creates should have a positive inspirational benefit. Now, not to say that you can't deal with darker elements of human psyche and society, but I don't think that it should be, cannibal holocaust or some form of, vicious, complete hate-filled kind of attitude. So I think that would go with like the moral.
Yeah, I think I have this other theory, lifeline through a genre. And it's sort of like Buster Keaton hurt himself to entertain us, but he didn't purposely go, I'm going to hurt myself. He didn't. He just knew the pratfall was part of his shtick. Chris Burden, this artist, had himself shot right here in Venice, but the guy was supposed to just skim his arm and it went right into his arm, and he became the hit of the art movement. And he's very intelligent artist. You just see the documentary on him. It's amazing. So he knew he was hurting himself, but he didn't want to hurt himself that bad. Then you flip it to Jackass, and not to legitimize it, they fucking are stupid assholes who literally fuck themselves up. So they get paid big bucks. It's like, duh, what do you want? Your body, you know.
I have a small confession though. I did go with a friend to go see the new one at the Chinese Man Theater, and I haven't laughed that hard in a long time because I couldn't believe what I was watching. You know, it was
it's
pure poetry.
It's phenomenal. It is phenomenal what he did. My brother, I go to the Ann Arbor Film Festival, the oldest experimental film festival in the world, every year. And I'm sitting there with my brother before the festival starts, and we're just happen to be watching a movie with his kids, and it's Jackass. This was many years ago. And we're laughing harder than we've ever laughed together as a brothers. And we're going, why are we laughing at this? So he really tapped into that through line. You know what I'm saying? From Buster Keaton to Chris Burton to Jackass.
Well, the other thing too, and not to harp on them so much, is it's not malicious. They're doing it like they're basically doing the same thing Keaton did, but in a lot more extreme manners. And but like the thing is, it's not malicious. They're not going out and hurting other people, and
they're not hurting others.
Yeah, they're not mean. You know, but yeah, it's funny. I'm actually a huge Buster Keaton fan. I was just watching I watched The General. I think that was what it was called the other night. I'm also a huge Three Stooges fan too.
Oh yeah. Curly episodes only.
Curly episodes only. And actually, I just started watching old episodes of the Abbott and Costello show, and I didn't realize how hilarious they really are.
Oh no, they're amazing. That feature they made, Abbott and Costello with Frankenstein's amazing. Because I'm deep into Frank Zappa, and they said, "So are you like the Marx Brothers of rock?" He goes, "No, we're more like the Three Stooges of rock." Like, it sounds sexist, I'm sorry, but if you meet a woman who says she likes Frank Zappa, that's like meeting a woman who says, "I like the Three Stooges curly episodes only."
Marry that woman.
Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
Old.
Yeah.
100%, yeah.
Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever, just briefly, or one of them?
Yeah. I was 2 years old in the crib, and my older brother, 3 years older than me, was making me laugh.
Nice.
But yeah, I do remember that. My mom actually has it on. She tape recorded it on a tape recorder, and she has the audio tape.
Oh my God, that is cool. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
It's bittersweet for me. I have a lot of bad memories. I have some good. I would say, I'll say a blessing, I guess, because I do sometimes like to live in a nostalgia, flashback moment with friends.
Can you conjure up, just briefly, a role model within your immediate family, someone who had an impact on you, and what specifically was that impact? And then outside your immediate family?
My father.
What'd you get from your dad?
Stubbornness and sheer passion for the things that I'm into. You couldn't pull me away from filmmaking. You couldn't pull my father away from the things he was really into, no matter what. He was just die hard into the things that he loved. So I got that like extreme drive, extreme ambition.
Yeah.
And a role model of someone who's not in my family.
Yeah. Or if they had an impact on you.
The author Hermann Hesse, for his book Damien.
What did you think you got mainly from Hesse?
Especially in the book Damien, the idea of learning the Gnostic ideas of the god Abraxas, and discovering freedom from a very strict religious upbringing, and understanding the dark side of nature, and understanding it's okay to look into that dark side of nature and not be afraid of some of that stuff. In fact, I have an Abraxas tattoo right here from Damien.
Wow. Wow. Well, you probably have ESP too, because you anticipate the next question. Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
My father was Baptist, an extremely strict Baptist. He had his own church, Haven Baptist in New Bedford, Massachusetts, and he was very literal in the Bible's teachings. There was no room for metaphor. He literally believed that everything in the Bible physically happened, and he was very gung-ho about it. He was a really loving father, but he was extremely strict when it came down to religious upbringing. My mother is spiritual, but she is also an atheist. So that was a really fun Sunday night dinner conversation to catch, and so I was fortunate enough where I was scared away by my father's strict religious views, and thankfully I had my mother to kind of, I went on her side where it was okay to be spiritual and, conjure up your own ideas and think for yourself and kind of escape this really strict, regimented Baptist lifestyle. So it would have been very easy for me to grow up Baptist, but I chose to kind of rebel and, kind of reject it for a while. And I became pretty much an atheist up until I was from like 12 to about 27 years old. And when I was 27, that's when I started, discovering different philosophical and spiritual texts that, I found the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, different magical texts, Crowley. And so, it's kind of like a potpourri at this point of spirituality.
Yeah. Courtney, do you pray?
Yes. Every morning and every night. Yep. And I should preference this by, I hope this doesn't sound pompous. It's just my personal, thing that I do. It's not to God per se, because I'm still working that whole thing out in myself. But I kind of work with the Neville Goddard approach, where your imagination is God, and you create your own, your own universe through your imagination. So when you pray, you're praying basically to help, elevate your inner self to get higher and higher. So it's not like praying to, a man in the sky. It's much more inwards to just hopefully, allow this day to be the best day it can be for both myself and the universe, kind of thing.
Beautiful. I'll just tell you what Harold Bloom said when they asked him, do you believe in God? He says, my attitude towards Yahweh is that I don't like him and I don't trust him and I wish he would go away, but I know he won't, because he's built into our language, as Nietzsche said.
Right. And
Isn't that amazing? Yeah, he won't.
And God being generate, order, and destroy.
Who says that?
That would be Eliphas Levi, I believe. The occultist author from France, the rebel.
Wow. And the other guy you mentioned is Neville Goddard?
Yeah, Neville Goddard. Yeah. He's a he was a lecturer. He was on the lecture circuit back in the 50s and the 60s. He wrote this insanely great book called Imagination is Key, I believe it's called. And he also did Infinite Potential, and he writes about how basically a positive visualization, and how if you believe you are already where you want to be, it will come. So you're not wishing for anything. You visualize that you're already there, and you're already, feeling the money in your hand. If let's say you want money and you meditate on it and things like that. So he's a really perfect.
That's Warhol said. It's not who you are, it's who you think you are.
Yeah, right. And that's so true. I can't believe that Warhol was able to spout such prophetic lines. But yeah, no, that's true.
Pretty good for a good Duchamp wannabe. So if God does exist, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Oh man, you did such a good job. You killed it. Boy, I'm really jealous of you. Come on in.
I like that. I never heard that. I'm jealous of you. Courtney, can you forget to die?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not something that's even, I watched my father die when I was younger. He died of cancer when I was about 21, and I made a documentary about his last days. And after witnessing that whole situation, I think that kind of cleared up any sort of reservation, fear, anxiety I have on that kind of thing. So it's just kind of, now we're just going in the present moment. But yeah, no, I mean, it comes up occasionally, but it's not something I lay awake about at all,
Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
It's like a Lord of the Flies question that I, was given in like when I was in high school. Evil people do evil people do not exist. It's the condition of the situation in which they're born into, in which they're presented with, the conditions they're presented with. That's my personal opinion. Ego again plays a big part in that, and the way that they're conditioned growing up. It's a complicated one because you think about someone like Jeffrey Dahmer or something like that. That's just, it's bonkers that someone could get to that level. But I do not actually believe that a human being is born evil.
Yeah.
I think that would be a really unfair advantage. If there actually is a God, I think that would be really, really, really bad.
Yeah, most people say everybody's capable of evil. That's really what I want to see. We're all capable of evil. Yeah.
Sure. And
But
a lot of us would fall into it without even knowing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's like we talked about today, Gregory Bateson's double bind. If a criminal gets caught, do they think they're doing something wrong, or do they think they just didn't have their criminal skills up that day? Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them, in a weird way, I think want to get caught. I think we learn a lot about that for serial killers. They get cocky and they write the letters to the police officers saying, "You're never going to catch me." And there's a thing where they almost want to get caught. But I think a lot of them have become so disenfranchised with society, and they've become so bonkers in their conditioning that they probably think what they're doing is perfectly fine.
Yeah. Well, well, let's go into this first. Is how the hidden question of the evil question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set up. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So actually, yeah, since you laughed at that one, check this one out. Walt Whitman says, I no doubt deserve my enemies.
That's great.
That's heavy. So the basic question is, Courtney, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think, and I mean, it's such a basic, like, kindergarten, lesson that we learn on the playground of, like, if, you're being bullied, like, don't even give them the attention.
Yeah.
It's like something we learn as kids, and, it kind of rings true. I think, like, you can really deflate someone's ego without, just by ignoring them. Hey, there's people out there that don't like me either. I mean, I don't care. It's not like I'm gonna, go on the internet and start fighting with them on, forums and stuff. I could care less, and I think that bothers them more.
Yeah. That's, what Sam Goldwyn said. As for the critics, don't even ignore them.
That's great. I like that a lot.
But let's go a little deeper with this, because it is interesting. People think, oh, accountability, we got to get a person in jail or, punish them. So it's sort of, I'm still working on the wording on this question, but I'm just going to throw out a couple ideas. Nassim Taleb said, games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, you don't know who really won or lost, but you can tell who is a hero and who is not. So then we go into this thing about punishment. And when I brought up heroes, someone said, well, villains don't think they are bad. They want control. Heroes want freedom. So it's sort of like discuss this idea of maybe heroes and what do we do with villains or enemies, or let's say villains. Do we punish them? Do we punish them? Does punishment work?
That's a tricky one for me, because I think it depends on the drastic nature in which we're talking about punishment. I do not believe in capital punishment.
Yeah.
So I believe punishment definitely. There should be consequences for evil actions and negative actions, but I'm not sure if we're going about it in society the right way. I don't know what the right way would be, but I think we're kind of going down a gutter right now when it comes down to the way that certain people are being persecuted. And that's a complicated one for me. I don't know. Yeah.
James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He said, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree?
That's great.
That's
great.
Years later, Faulkner said, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Yeah, I agree. Being a filmmaker, that's a complicated one for me too, but I agree. I completely agree. I think, you know what that goes into? I think that might go into control. Some of the artists, maybe all of us artists, want control of certain things, and we want to kind of manipulate. And that's probably what it is. We want to try to manipulate nature and play God for a little bit, I guess.
Dude, no one says that to that question. And I really resonate, because it goes back to that. The hero wants freedom and the villain wants control. So it's like, that's a weird paradox, because just in interviewing, I ask these questions. It's a control freak thing. We're not just having one person said, can't we just talk? And it is a control thing. I know, but it's fun because it's these jumping off points and I want it to flow. So you really get it. Now, so tell me just briefly, Courtney, the sort of through line where you decided, like, I want to make films. So tell us, would you grow up watching, VHS or cable or movie theaters, and your parents are taking me? And VHS. And then where was that tipping point where you say, well, I can do that?
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I was thinking about this today, because I figured that we would be talking about this. I can't remember a time where I wasn't obsessed with movies. I was watching all those Universal monster movies and all the Cary Grant, Vincent Price, Jimmy Stewart movies with my grandfather when I was in like 4th grade. I knew more about Vincent Price and Cary Grant than all of my peers and fellow students knew about, like, baseball, sports teams and all that stuff. I was obsessed with early cinema and Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin. Around 4th grade, I remember having a dream where I was making a movie, and I woke up in fear because, and this was like when I was in 4th grade, like I was a little kid, that I didn't know how to make a movie. And I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen if I get on set? Like, as if it was going to happen the next day. I was only in 4th grade, but I had no idea. And around that time, a neighbor of mine had their parents' home video camera, and we just started from there. I've been making movies, half of them have been schlock because I was only in 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade at that time. But I've been making movies since I was like in 4th grade and kind of self-taught. And that was the moment. I think around 7th grade, it was my family knew, my friends knew. It was just like, what, that's what it's going to be, And they had this test when I was in 7th grade, what they call like aptitude test, where they tell you what you're going to be good at. And like you fill out the forms and they say you're going to be like good at something. Apparently I was, even though I didn't even have my license, I was in 7th grade, they told me I'd be a good driving instructor. That should be the career path. I go, no, I don't even know if that is a career path. I think that was like a teacher that you had to be. But yeah, that was the tipping point was around 7th grade. And from then on, we just kept going. And then I went to Pratt Institute for a semester, but that school was not good for me. It was really limited. And I left after my first semester. And at 18, just started traveling the country with my camera, many times penniless, and just I hitchhiked a lot. I crashed with friends and traveled 46 of the 50 states, just making short documentaries with my high camera. And that was that. And so here we are now at 37 years old, and I just haven't stopped.
Very cool. What a story. Really inspiring, Courtney. A screenwriting teacher told me great film, great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Kubrick says great film is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process when you're making a film?
It took me quite some time. It took me up until a couple of years ago to actually find my voice as a filmmaker. In regards to intention, I would be more apt to go with Kubrick on that one. I would never, even though I implement a lot of myself and a lot of my work, at this point, I do agree with him. And like, it's nice to watch a movie and not know who made it. You know, it's nice to like, I like going into a movie. If someone has a movie, if I go to a friend's house and they're watching something and I'm still trying to pinpoint it, I mean, we all know what a Tarantino movie looks like. We all know what, certain movies look like, and I'm not talking bad about any of them, but it's nice when you kind of like get sucked away from knowing like, oh, that's, a Val Lewton film, or hey, there's, oh, definitely like Kubrick did that, or, that's a Robert Altman film. It's nice when you can kind of get sucked away, but that also is part of, being ignorant to, certain filmmakers, I guess. But
well, that's auteur theory, but it is beautiful because Louis Buñuel said, when you come out of a film and you go, wasn't the cinematography great? The filmmaker failed.
Exactly.
The filmmaker didn't fail per se, but he's saying something similar to you.
I had a like a dagger stabbed right in my heart. I screened Hollywood at the Philosophical Research Society, and it was absolutely wonderful. It was the premiere, and after the screening, I was in the courtyard and just saying hi to everybody. It was really beautiful, and a person walked up to me, and they said, "I really like the movie. What did you film it on?" And I was like, it killed me. It's just like that. That's what you were thinking, that the whole time. That was what you were wondering.
Right.
We're going into theosophy. We're going into philosophy, comparative religion, and that's what you're thinking about. I failed.
Yeah. No, but it is a phenomenon. Me and you, we can't watch films without feeling and understanding the form.
Mm-hmm.
But we want to be swooped into the content, and we don't want the form. We want it to be invisible, but you cannot literally get rid of that completely. And that's when the film, the form, and the content are so like a DNA strand, you can't separate.
Well, it's interesting as well, because there are times where, like we were talking about Hollis Frampton and Brackage, where
That's what I was going to say. Frampton. Yeah.
Frampton. Let's take Frampton, for example. Like his the movie he did with the lemon, with the light that just shines over the lemon. I would watch that because I want to try to figure out what Hollis was thinking. So in that aspect, like, it's good to know who put that together. I watch, Psalm 32, I think it is, by Brackage, and Mothlight, obviously, but all the Dog Star Man series, and because I want to know what was going on in Brackage's mind, and what poems he was trying to put together visually. So in that sense, knowing, having the non secrecy of who made this movie. My one of my best friends and I always have this joke of, we've always dreamt about making a movie where we basically don't take Alan Smithies, but we just don't take anything, and then we just release it. So like in 20 years, some NYU film kid will be like, who the hell made this movie? Like, what is this? And there'd never be an answer to it. And it'd be like the secret movie.
That's brilliant. Definitely do it. I'm there. I'll help you release it. But Jay Rosenblad, I don't know if you've ever seen see it. He got nominated for an Oscar this year for a short film. Brilliant filmmaker. And he's interviewed in my book. I'll send you a copy of it.
Cool.
But Jay's a great filmmaker, and he's like right out of Chris Marker, Sans Soleil. And I says, how did Chris Marker and Sans Soleil affect you? He goes, it just what you said. It made me want to think how Hollis made this. And he said, I tried to imagine how Chris Marker made this. Not I studied every Chris Marker book and they told me how he made it. It's how I wanted to imagine he made it. That's you brought up. So McLuhan says everything we invent extends some human sensorium. I call it humanness. So clothing extends our skin, knife and fork extends our teeth. The shutter in a projector or camera is an extension of our eyelid. Even non-physical, religion or philosophy is an extension of what? Memory or consciousness. What does the moving image camera, whether it's video or film, what humanness does it extend for you?
It's an extension of perception of the plane of reality in which we're operating on. I've said this before. There's been so many times where I've been making a documentary, and because I'm looking through the camera, I miss so much that's happening. And then when I'm editing, I realize the poetry and the insane beauty that had been captured that I didn't even know was there in front of me at the time. So in essence, the camera is basically like my third eye, like perceiving and picking up different elements that I'm missing with these two eyes.
Oh, that's great. It extends your third eye perception.
And Stan Brakhage has a lot to write on that as well. Stan Brakhage, his whole thing is, utilizing, because his whole thing was with vision, and he was basically trying to create films from his thought forms, and he was trying to present it. So,
Hypnagogic is
hypnagogic.
Hypnagogic. I'm hip with that. But a couple things. One is McLuhan's line's great. What do the movies extend? Your foot, because you're traveling. It's like a magic carpet ride. It's really amazing, because most people say, what does film extend? Your eye, memory. I really love what you said, the third eye and perception. And
I know that from like an actual like fact for making my own films, because there's been so many times in editing I'm like, wow, when did that happen, or how did I miss that? And
exactly. In Jean Rouch, the great French documentarian and film theorist, said, when I put a camera between me and you, it's more real than if there's no camera. And I think the proof is right now. This is more real than if we met in person and I was interviewing you in a room, because both of our eyes would wander and we'd be smelling this. This is really the phenomenon that I've learned since COVID hit. Is my events are better on Zoom than they were live. Yeah, people don't want to hear that. Yeah. But I still do live events, but I'm sorry, this is what I've experienced.
I mean, there's a genius named Errol Morris who figured this one out much earlier on, and the staring into the camera, around the corner of the room, so they don't know that he's sitting there. He asks the questions, but he's not even in the room. They just have to answer to the camera. So it's kind of like we're an extension of that at this point right now.
That's the Terratron, but there's a funny
Terratron, that's what it's called. Yeah,
there's a funny thing, Courtney, about that. He says, I want you to answer the questions looking in my eyes. So we have right now we feel we're looking into each other's eyes, or I feel the way you're looking at your green dot is you're looking into my eyes, and we're getting a more sincere communication. But when Errol made his little short for the Oscars several years ago,
Yeah, right.
he interviewed, Jello Biafra, all these hipsters, how movies are so cool. Two of them, Eddie Murphy and Sean Connery, says, "You're wanting me to pour my emotions into your eyes? No, we do it into glass lenses." They
That's great.
literally said, "We don't do that into your eyes. We do it into glass lenses."
That's amazing.
So that's a real phenomenon. That's a unique, because if you frame someone, you go, okay, look into the camera lens, but your eyes are right next to the lens. They want to look at your eyes. It's
Yeah.
hard to get them to stare into the lens.
Yeah.
And that's why the Teratron is a success,
Yeah, it's a groundbreaking achievement. I mean, I know that didn't Errol have a background as a private investigator, so he
Yeah.
knows how to interview very well and get the
Yes.
answers pretty well.
Yes. Okay, you brought up reality. Is perception reality?
No. Perception's perception. It's subjective.
McLuhan says there's no such thing as a good or a bad movie. It's a good or a bad viewing experience. Any comment?
Yeah, if you can feel your butt in the movie theater, see, it's a bad movie.
Well, I didn't know you were so into experimental film, so we got to divert into that. Peter Greenaway says cinema is much too rich a medium to be left to storytellers. Are experimental filmmakers telling stories a different way or doing something completely different? If me and you watch Tony Conrad's The Flicker,
yeah, of course,
we're going to both maybe have some story go through our head, but he didn't really make it to tell a narrative or tell a story per se. We don't know his intention. So any comment?
I think that goes with language of what you were talking about earlier, about the idea if language broke down. I think, like, so for instance, if we're watching Flickr, or even like, let's take Wavelength. If you and I were watching that together, we would have two different experiences. And I think the point would be is the open interpretation, though they definitely had an idea, but I don't think that it's supposed to be cemented down on what this is. It's kind of like Marie Menken's, I think it's just called Lights, where it's all the lights that are flickering around. I watched that and I came up with at least like 18 different ideas of like what I was watching while I was watching it. And even Stan Brackage's, it's this 50-minute movie where he films an ashtray close up. And just with the lights going through the glass of the ashtray, and it looks like these billowing mountains with clouds going over, and it's just an ashtray. So I'm not sure if, I mean, I could be talking on my ass here, but I'm not sure if they had intention, but I'm not sure if they were ready to fight for a meaning of what it is. I think it was pretty open interpretive to the viewer and see like where that goes. That would be my take on it.
No, that was good. And you know what, you brought up intention. Good, because I left this one out by mistake. Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. When you're making your film, how much are you thinking of your viewing audience?
Oh, none.
Yeah.
Kenneth Anger says the same thing too. He's making films for himself.
Yeah. But that also is like Zappa saying, I make this music for myself, but if people like it, that's fine. I say, and I respect both him and Kenneth, but I say, yeah, you're over romanticizing it, because you know that if you do this certain thing or that, people will buy your film and then you can make more films.
Yeah, well, there's also like,
you can't separate, just to finish, you can't separate that you've been raised in a consumer capitalism culture that knows, yeah, you can make art and sell it and make more art,
You have to find that fine line. I actually, in 2010, I was doing a documentary called The Hole about the Black Cowboy Federation in Brooklyn, and I had a co-director named Billy Feldman, and he is a lot more conservative in his cinema ideology and philosophy than I am, because I come from the school of experimental films.
Yeah.
And he had to constantly rein me in, where we were trying to make, a pretty structured narrative short. And
Yeah.
there would be times where I'd be more interested in filming like the reeds and the wind and,
Yeah.
and he would have to rein me in sometimes. And we had a long conversation about this. And I remember him saying, like, in order for us to complete this and make it somewhat successful, we
Yeah.
have to find the balance where it's not indulgent, but you can
Yeah.
still have your art, your creative input. But if it gets too out there, it just becomes indulgent and you lose all of the audience.
Yeah.
I've
Oh, I've
lost a lot
studied
of audience for a lot of my films. So
yeah, and it's fine. I've studied all that. I mean, Chris Marker Sans Soleil to me is the
yeah,
pinnacle of that in Buñuel. But have you
you
ever
talk
seen
about like the most elusive filmmaker of all time, Chris
yeah,
Marker. Oh my God.
yeah. But have you ever seen Rat by Theo Anthony about the
Mm-mm.
rat? Oh, dude, see it. It's amazing because he snuck it in, man. He got, he studied with Herzog and then he made a documentary about rat poison in Baltimore. And he's a good filmmaker, but man, there's a point in there. It's like an experimental film. I goes, that was amazing. All of a sudden you're in a car being car washed and it's like, this is the abstract cinema.
I love
But
that.
but I mean, the ultimate is Kubrick slipping in an 8-minute experimental animation in the middle of 2001 and
Right.
helping it tell the story. But you could literally take the Stargate sequence out, enter it in an abstract animation festival, and not tell people. So it's great. Because I have this stupid question I've been trying to formulate, and I'll just ask you it anyways. Do artists have an obligation to be accessible?
If not an obligation, I think it's a choice.
Choice, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And I do want to say one thing going back before, though. I also have this great wonder, and like I could watch something in which many could consider camp. Let's take a George Kuchar film, who's like
Yeah.
one of my idols, or Jack Smith. Let's take
Yeah.
Flaming Creatures, or
Yeah.
Normal Love. I
Yeah.
can pull some like beautiful inspiration, poetry, and just complete love out of those things, where I could watch a George Kuchar weather diary and weep and feel so like touched by it. And to like maybe a more rigid conservative film goer, they would just want to turn it off and they wouldn't understand it. So
Now
finding,
somehow you got tweaked by your granddad showing those films because
I think so, yeah.
he opened you up to some sort of openness to go from what your peers were watching and attracted to learning film history, abandon the film history, and then go for your own. Because first of all, Jack Smith, David Lynch, Andy Warhol, and John Waters are all Jack Smith wannabes. And if we told them that, they'd go, thanks for the compliment.
Andy Warhol said the only filmmaker he would ever want to imitate is Jack Smith.
Yeah, they all are. And it was really beautiful what you said. But there's two lines I wanted to tell you that I love. Al Flipside said, "Don't sell out, sneak in."
That's great. I like that.
And then the other one is Paul Schrader, screenwriter and director. The role of the artist is to attempt to sell out but fail. Now that's got a little twist to it, because it's sort of like a lot of snooty artists will go, well, I attempted to sell out, but I failed.
Well, that sounds so Paul Schrader too. It's just like a perfect Paul Schrader quote.
But it is sort of cool, but it's not like, it's sort of like why John Waters loves Mike Kelly so much. Mike Kelly never sold out, but they have to go, he's so cool. It's like, yeah, well, I sold out, but I'm not as cool as him. So anyways, Michael Apted, I talked to him 40 years ago when MTV was first breaking. I says, why do rock video editors feel so obliged to edit fast? Most people don't know Abel Gance invented rapid montage in 1922, but it flourished in 1980 with MTV. And Marty Scorsese says, I cut my films faster because of MTV. Michael Apted said, because we've learned to take in information faster. I asked this with a bias. Can we literally learn to take in information faster, or are we just brainwashed to believe we can?
I think we can. I think that's getting more and more obvious with the inventions of social media and where we're at right now. I think, or maybe we're not taking in information faster. We're just all getting really bad ADD.
Is it literally possible task?
To take in information faster?
Well, no, just to change the wording. Is it literally possible to multitask? Not, yeah, not information faster. We're done. I mean, or you can return to it, but I'm just saying.
No, the screen froze for a second, so I wasn't sure.
Yeah, because it's basically this. Most people say, yeah, we can learn to take in information faster. About 60 to 70% of people say that. And I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer, but then the hidden question really is, can humans literally multitask?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So, Courtney, how did you form, they love that word, what informs your framing aesthetic? So, like if I hold my fingers up like this, that's your framing aesthetic. What informed your framing aesthetic? How did you form your framing aesthetic?
Well, I'm not a cinematographer, but when I was at Pratt, I do remember one big moment in my photography class was learning about the studium and the punctum, which a lot of people don't talk about, but it's like,
say those two words again. I missed that.
Studium and punctum, and it's basically foreground, background. And so that's like something that always stuck with me, but I'm in awe of photographer. It's weird. I can't take still photos. I'm such a bad photographer. I can only film motion. And so I'm in awe of people who are really good still photographers.
Right.
Like Wim Wenders, the guy's a genius. He can do both still photography and his movies, and they both look absolutely brilliant. But the framing for me is kind of like haphazard, I would say. I never really concentrate on it that much, though.
Yeah, but I still didn't get, after the word studio, how do you spell that?
Studium.
Studios. But I thought you said punctum.
Punctum is the second word.
Yeah, so how do you spell punctum?
I think it's PUNCTUM.
Okay, that's fine. So because that's what I see in
Peter I could be saying them wrong too. It's been so long, but I do remember.
No, I can look it up. I just wanted to make sure. But Peter Greenaway's the same way. His earlier films, he frames them, and each frame could be stilled, and it could be a painting. The way he.
Well, speaking of framing too, Rules of the Game.
Yeah.
That film that basically has inspired countless cinematographers. That where every angle and every move and every pan, and there's so much going on. It's so busy, and there's angles, and it's one of the best shot films I've ever seen. And I believe that film created what they call the L shot, where the camera moves. And I believe that's where Spielberg got the inspiration for a lot. He uses that shot a lot, and I think it's from Rules of the Game.
Yeah, that's good. I'm learning a lot. I appreciate this. Who needs film school when you can talk to Courtney on your podcast?
Nobody needs film school. I'm anti-film school. Nobody needs film school.
I asked Bruce Bailey, the guy who started.
I miss him so much. I had a correspondence with him right before he passed.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. And I asked him at the Ann Arbor Film Festival, in fact, live, how'd you form your framing aesthetic? And he goes, well, I'll surrender to Sean Cocteau, who said the way we formed our framing aesthetic was the way you put your knife and fork on the dinner table.
That's great.
Which is amazing, because I think most people form their framing aesthetic from seeing photographs and paintings their whole life. That already established the framing aesthetic. And then Robert Frank came along and framed like this, or Cassavetes. Cassavetes fight scenes, they're like, what's the camera doing down there?
And George Kuchar, His aesthetic was because he used to love drawing comic books, so he just liked things in boxes. So his
Yeah.
framing said he shot his films as if they were comic books. Going
Yeah.
back to Bruce Bailey, though, his framing is brilliant, and I can't remember the name of the movie, but when he just pans across the fence with the blue sky, and it has that,
Yeah.
I think, a Billie Holiday song playing, and
Yeah.
it's just
Yep.
one. That film alone is one of my all-time favorites. I can't believe that he did that. I mean, it's so
Yeah.
simple, but it's so powerful.
I
And
got
as the
to tell
story
you,
goes, I believe he jumped out of his car. He was like in Big Sur, and he just saw that location, and he jumped out of his car and filmed it in one shot.
yeah, really important guy. And I love you bringing up Kuchar, because Kuchar and more so Kurt McDonald were the darlings of Ann Arbor for many years. It doesn't matter what, every year they would win and bid. And then they entered Thundercrack and they went, nope, too far. Sorry. It got rejected, and it was like, that's a true statement for screening committees. Whoop! But
I had
wall to wall KY.
exactly. I had the great honor of going to Anthology Film Archives when they were screening a remastered version of Thundercrack. I owned it on a VHS tape as a young adult, and it was like one of my pride and joys. And I went, and I actually sat next to Kurt's sister. She was there to present it. And so I sat with her. I think her name was Melissa. And so I sat next to her watching Thundercrack, and I just kept thinking, like, this is kind of surreal. Like, she's watching herself on the screen in her brother's movie. Like, this is kind of weird. But it was really, at the end, I gave her a big hug. And
beautiful.
I spent time right before the pandemic. I spent time with Mike Kuchar. He had a show in LA, and I got to spend time. I love Mike so much.
Yeah.
Those two guys, they could be arguably, other than Herzog, my cinematic heroes, Mike and George. Yeah.
Very good. And what do you think the motive of the cave artist was? Not what Herzog says in his your hunch. Or the New Yorker article where Herzog got it all from. But anyways, your hunch, what was the motive of the cave art?
To allow their culture and their traditions to not die away, to continue to pass on ideas and stories. I guess that's really a basic answer. I mean, but
that's all right. Yeah. That's good. What's more important, conviction or compromise?
Conviction. A lot more important.
You've accomplished a lot. Rate these three elements, Courtney. Skill, luck, and ambition. What played the biggest role, second and third?
Ambition, skill, and luck. I've always had bad luck.
Well, it's funny because my question for years was, is ambition based more on fear or joy? Then I read Friedkin's book, or I read Friedkin's interview in the Weekly, and it said, in Hollywood, skill and luck have nothing to do with it. It's all ambition.
I 100% agree. 100%. I think if someone sees someone pushing a boulder up the hill, their heads are going to turn. They're going to say, "Who is that guy?" And then they're going to want to get you. Then they're going to try to pull you on their team.
Yeah. T.S. Eliot said, "Poetry is outing your inner dialogue." What language is your inner dialogue in?
The voice of Werner Herzog. No, I don't know. I don't know. I think it would be a lot more visual. I think in images more than I think in words or sentences. I think it's a lot more visual and thoughts, dreams almost.
Yeah, that's funny because I don't want to go into Herzog because we'll divert too much. But I will invite you. Let's do a whole salon like this, 90 minutes on Herzog sometime.
Okay. I would. His early documentaries are some of my all-time favorite films ever.
Yeah,
like
the one on Gene Scott.
Yeah, that one's great. And he does one where he goes into a church in Brooklyn and just films. It's called Huey's Sermon, and he just films this kind of church going on, and it's brilliant.
Well, dude, proudly the one who screened the American premiere of A Geary Wrath of God in Ann Arbor, Michigan, not in New York.
Oh my God, that's incredible.
Yeah, it was a fluke. But anyways, McLuhan probed Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce, saying artists dream awake. Not to sound elitist, everyone has this power to create these amazing scenarios in the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm.
But artists can also dream awake. Have dreams played a role in your creative process?
I've always wanted them to. I'm more of like, my ideas come from when I'm doing something mindless. If I'm like mowing the lawn or if I'm cooking, things start coming in the shower. a lot of ideas come. I've always wanted to have that kind of, artist dream, that like, or not dream, the artist idea that like all my ideas come from dreams, kind of like a David Lynchian kind of feel, but it doesn't work for me like that. I've tried when I was younger to make films out of my dreams, and it's just mush.
Yeah. No, I like that mindless. That's George Carlin said, whatever happened to letting kids stare out the window?
Yeah.
Daydreaming.
Yeah.
A really great jazz pianist, she told me recently, boredom. It's not, boredom gets a bad rap. It's that what you said, mindless boredom.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you can nurture ideas sometimes. So that was beautiful. Why is it so difficult for humans to consider the possibility that life might be pointless?
That it's an impossibility to consider that it might be?
Well, it's that it's difficult for humans to consider. I'm not saying life is pointless. I'm saying
I think it would damage their ego.
Yeah.
I think if someone was to walk up to another person and say, this life is pointless, this very nihilistic thought, I think that would kind of, all of the willpower and all of the ambition just get sucked away. So I would think that it would just be like a kick to the gut, It'd be a soul bruise.
Soul bruise. What a word, soul bruise. Okay, so George Manupelli started the Ann Arbor Film Festival 61 years ago. His mantra is ignore yourself. Jonas Mekas says there is no self-expression. And Cecil Taylor, great jazz pianist, says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me.
Mm-hmm.
Stupid question. I know it's both and it depends, but just your hunch. Is art making more self-expression or more you're a vehicle for whatever culture, technologies, and environments are dominant?
A little of both. I know that's kind of a
no, that's all right.
You have to have there has to be some self-expression, or else it's just going to come off as like concrete and soulless. It has to have some form of personality to it, but it definitely is going to be directed by the situation that the artist finds themselves in, for sure. The situation will definitely inspire, but I think it's a little of both.
Can art making be egoless?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a very hard place to get to. I can only think of like a few artists that come off the top of my head that I would consider that, but then again, I'm not sure. I would Van Gogh, maybe. I mean, yes, he had quite a history of being obnoxious and kind of a terrible person, but he sincerely just wanted to be left alone and paint his pictures. I don't see an ego in George Kuchar's work.
Yeah.
I see him just being joyful and happy, and and I guess it's we're talking about like the little, not the biggie, but like I think you could get there. I don't know. I'm not there, but I think there is a possibility that one could definitely get there.
Courtney,
I'm optimistic to that question. I'm optimistic.
Courtney, I'm really impressed. Somehow I stumbled on the Hollywood trailer and said, this seems an interesting guy. I really knew nothing about you, and you really get what I'm after in this kind of interview. And I was really happy you said yes to that, because like 80 to 90% people go, can art making be egoless? They go, no. Then about 2 years ago, someone said, great art is egoless. And I was sort of shocked. I like, wow, somebody finally went counter the what most people said. Then a couple weeks, someone's, can art making be egoless? And they said, it has to be egoless. So it's really amazing how it's always, the answers are always wavering, but I do find a tendency of how, people.
Well, here's a great example is the monks who and even Herzog did Wheel of Time, the documentary on this. The monks who make those beautiful sand mazes, and then they blow it away afterwards.
Yeah.
So the creation of the art is the art, and the
the process. That's
yeah.
The greatest piece of art ever made on the face of the earth is in the fucking ghetto in LA. It's called the Watts Towers. Dude spent 33 years just making a collage, and then he goes, okay, I'm done. Bye. He didn't say, collect $5 for everybody who sees this and send me money, I'm
going to declare one of the greatest pieces of art ever is going to be a Jenga tower, and I'm going to be the one that pulls the block and the whole thing falls.
Right. Which is perfect for the Watts Towers, because the Los Angeles government hired an engineer to pull it down and say, this could fall down in an earthquake. And the truck went, it couldn't pull it down. Bud Goldstone, my friend, was in charge of it. And then everybody went, holy fuck, this guy's better than Gaudi, Okay, so tell me one major element of your filmmaking creativity that's changed since you started, and one major element that stayed the same.
Well, like I said earlier, it's been a couple of years now. I finally feel like I found my voice, because I definitely bounced around a lot in different genres, horror genres, exploitation, shorts, music videos. I think the only thing that stayed the same is the ambition, where I have an idea and I'm going to fight for it and finish the film, no matter what, without money or with money. The thing that's changed, I think, is my attitude towards filmmaking at this point, where, like I said before, I think at least for me, speaking for me, the work I want to make, I want people to walk away feeling inspired or something to think about. It doesn't have to be, this like holy moment. It doesn't have to be, but I don't want people to walk away feeling, negative or hurt or anything like that. Back in the day when I was in my punk stage, my rebel stage, back in my New York days, I definitely was going after the jugular with some of my early work, where I would definitely want to really affect people in maybe a more negative way with my work and be more offensive and stuff. But now I just want people to walk away feeling good about what they had seen. So I think that's what's changed. But what hasn't changed is the ambition and the drive.
Beautiful. Courtney, that's like Billy Wilder says, I just hope they like the film as much as they like the popcorn.
That's okay. A hard one,
Yeah. Well, Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength, rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Mm-hmm. Tell me a weakness you turned into a strength.
Anxiety.
And how'd you turn it into a strength?
Turned it into like an eagerness, like in anticipation, like a positive anticipation.
Yeah.
I've suffered with anxiety all my life, and I still do, but there's times where, especially in like the creative process, if I'm anxious about, something that I'm doing, I try to morph it, because it's the same thing, anxiety, fear, and, excitement are basically the same thing. It's just different levels. So you can kind of alter those.
I'm going to take your advice, man. As I've gotten older, I've gotten more anxiety, and it's like, dude, you've been mellow your whole life. Why are you getting more anxiety?
we did just go through a lot in the last 4 years. So
like, where's this coming from? Mel, chill out. Like Captain Beefheart says, the stars are matter, we are matter, but it doesn't matter.
And as Tom Waits says, I'd rather have a bottle in front of me than a bottle in front of me.
That is good. Anger can be a productive emotion when fill in the blank.
It's contained to not affect others in a negative way, but altered to basically light a fire under the creator's ass.
Beautiful. There's a question I probably won't ask you, but it's sort of like I'll tell you the story of it. Can satire be destructive?
Yes.
Now, some people say yes, because if you do a cartoon in a certain country and they kill you, some people think dying is destructive. But my friend who wrote comedy with Robin Williams said, can satire be destructive? And he said that's the job of satire. So, he's putting it in different realms, sort of. But Jonathan Swift compared satire to a mirror in which people could see every face but their own. What's the function of satire?
Well, what we're learning these days is satire is where we get our information for the most part. At this point, it's like you watch the news and you don't know what the hell's going on, and you go watch like a late night talk show and they're having satire about like something that Trump did or something, and you're like, oh, that happened, and you're just like, I don't know. I think satire, a big part of satire, there's so much truth in satire. Now, where I believe it can become destructive is if they cross to the line where it becomes malicious again. Like you can really dig deep, and obviously I'm a huge fan of Ricky Gervais and I love all that stuff, and but there's certain times where like I've seen certain acts that are satire and it just comes off as being like mean-spirited and stupid and not here it is. Satire is destructive when it's not clever.
Not clever. Very good.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Okay, you brought up a great thing. Louis Buñuel said, I'm for anyone who seeks the truth, but I part ways when they claim they found it. Sounds good. Most 99% of people go, that's good. I agree. And one guy goes, nope, that's bullshit. Because if I'm going to seek it, I want to find it. So the cliche goes, the journey is more important than the destination. We talked about this earlier, the process. If the journey is more important than the destination, why do we have to name a destination or seek a destination?
Oh, that's interesting. For X marks the spot for the spot to start the journey. You got to start the journey seeking something, or else you're just an aimless wanderer.
Well, but Courtney, that's the people who changed the world forever were in Paris in the 1920s, and they were called flaneurs, psychogeography, and they just aimlessly wandered. And, Stravinsky and Joyce changed everything.
That's true. Yes. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe you don't need a destination.
Yeah. Well, no, it's a hard call because most people say we need focus or whatever, but you put it in a good metaphor, X. What's the most significant difference between men and women, physical aside?
Women are stronger. Us men get it. We got it easy. Women are stronger in so many ways. And they put up with so much, and they've gone through so much, and they have to deal with childbirth, and they have to deal with so much. And us men, we definitely have it a lot easier.
Yep, I agree. There's a line, Courtney, that goes, you create what you resist. Bob Goldthwait morphed it into you are what you hate.
Yeah.
And James Joyce said, it's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve. Louis Buñuel nailed it. He said, thank God I'm an atheist.
Sounds like something Ingmar Bergman would say too.
Yeah, but I'm curious, your thoughts on that line. Not you create what you resist, but one creates what do you think of that? That's idea.
I agree.
Resist. Yeah.
I much agree. Yeah. I mean, not like fully, it's not like a mirror image, but it's definitely you're putting your attention it's kind of like, let's say you're trying to avoid a certain thing. Let's say you're not drinking and you're going to meetings and you're trying to avoid not drinking. And when you go to a grocery store, the whole time you're thinking, I can't go down that aisle because there's liquor there. You're putting this energy into it. So you're basically fighting to resist it. And it's kind of like creating an egregore over you. So you're basically, it's destroying you for resisting, where instead, like, there's so many other other ways. I'm kind of trying to botch this explanation, but I know what I'm trying to say. I'm just having trouble getting it out there. But like, it's not mirror, but you're definitely putting energy into something that you're trying to resist, and you're becoming something. There's elements of the thing that you're trying to resist.
Well, it's Blake. We become what we behold.
Yeah.
How do you
I kind
find
of botched that, but yeah, whatever.
No, that was good. How do you find peace of mind?
Music. Listen to music. Music's probably the biggest thing in my life.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
We got about 5 more minutes. I really appreciate this, Courtney. A couple more and we're here. Here's 5 quickie Alan Watts questions just off the top of your head in a few words.
Mm-hmm.
First one, who started it all?
You and I, us, the
individual. I love that. Are we going to make it?
Yeah, because it's part of our experience, depending on what one believes making it is, but we will make it. Everybody will make it. It's just whatever their destiny is.
Third, where do we put it?
Hopefully in the heart somewhere, and heart and soul.
Who's cleaning it up?
Well, we should be, but we're probably not doing the best job. I think, unfortunately, we leave a lot of baggage to other people.
Is it serious?
No.
Way to go. Again, there's no right or wrong answers, but that one you got right. Go.
Not serious at all. The whole thing's a cosmic joke.
Cosmic giggle. Which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
Under. Oh, wait a second. No. I take that back. Over.
Why?
Convenience. Is that an Alan Watts question? I don't think so.
No, we're done with the Alan Watts. That's I after is it serious? Then I do the toilet paper to give them the gap, like, you know.
I like it.
If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Oh, like, dude, hold on. Hold the fuck on.
That is a good answer. If a publisher was to release your autobiography off the top of your head, what would the title be?
Dude, hold on.
That is great. They want
to. Like this is just like dark humor, but it's not sad at all. It's just a fun moment. Right before my dad passed, he was on his deathbed, and we were all saying like our last words to him. And the last thing I said to him was, "Put in a good word for me because I'm gonna need it."
That's beautiful. The name of your autobiography is Dude, Hold On. They want to scent the glue in the binding. What smell?
Cherry cough syrup.
Oh my God. I've never had that answer. That is good. I'm from Flint, Michigan, and my friends, you know, everybody's grows up in Flint from my era, baby boomers, is to work in the car factory. Right. You're destined to be a shop rat. And you know what you end up doing? getting addicted to Robitussin.
Yeah, you're right.
Ugh!
Yeah.
That's why American cars suck. They've been fucking drinking cough syrup, putting them together.
When I was at film camp when I was 15 years old, I tried that for the first time and it was a nightmare.
Yeah. Okay, if a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed and what would it be made of?
Beechwood Canyon. I would want
Nice.
it in Beechwood Canyon for sure. And what would it be made out of? Marble. That would be awesome.
Tell me something good you never had and you never want.
The feeling of jumping out of a plane.
Nice. That's good. You never had it and you never want it. Yeah. And if you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
This is a Gigi Allen concert.
Wait, what did you say?
This is a Gigi Allen concert.
Yeah. You're at a Gigi Allen concert. He puts you in a vat of vomit and he throws a bag of shit at your face. Really good. Nobody put into context. You're the first one.
What was the question? What would I do?
Yeah, what would you do?
Duck my head under the vat of vomit and just kind of like push it away and then try to get out afterwards.
That's good. Yeah, that's, you know, what is Todd a good filmmaker? I mean, he went to NYU, he made The Joker. And, you know, we were at the Writers Guild. And, you know, to me, he's just so calculated. He knows exactly what he's doing. Like, use this song and he'll piss people off and he'll get press and everything. But we tried to get him to talk about his Gigi Allen doc, you know, because that's really sort of a little off for a Hollywood kind of wannabe successful director. It's like, you don't want to say, yeah, I directed Gigi Allen doc.
He gave me when I was in 2007, I was working for this small fanzine in Boston, and the distribution company that put out Todd's Gigi's doc put out a couple of my early films, and so we were label mates. And so he gave me an interview about Gigi. So I actually have somewhere in my archives an interview with Todd about his time making that documentary, and it's quite enlightening. I think he's a great filmmaker. Yeah, I think when you come from making that movie to where he is now, that's quite a beautiful progression.
Pretty amazing. 3 more and we're out of here, dude. Really been fun. What's the cultural shift you see developing today that inspires you?
Cultural shift. I don't know. I can't think of it off the top of my head. I mean, there's a bunch. I just that's too big for me to think about right now.
Thornton Wilder said, art is confession. Art is the secret told. But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time.
Oh, that's great.
You've laid your cards on the table for over 90 minutes. Courtney, I'm not insinuating you haven't already answered this. What's it really all about for you?
To get to the bottom of it, all. Like I said, finding poetry and beauty in such everyday things and things that most people might not find.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And kind of inner growth. So I guess it's a selfish endeavor, but whatever.
No, I like it. That was good. Last question. What gives you the most optimism?
The way that the youth of today are so brilliant.
Yeah.
Kids these days are brilliant.
It's great. You know,
so I think we're in good hands.
That's the answer I get the most on that question.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's amazing. And it's funny because the first question is, what's the best thing for a human being? And you said love and laughter. And that entails other people. I got it from Wilhelm Reich. He said, what's the best thing for a human being is another human being.
Mm.
And the last question is what they asked Groucho Marx at the end of his life. What gives you the most optimism? And he said, other people.
That's great. Yeah.
Whether they're old or young, but it's really been a pleasure. Courtney, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, man. It's been awesome. It's such an honor to be on your show. Let's do this again soon. Let's do the Herzog Saloon.
Oh, we'll do the Herzog Salon. Let's stay in touch. And even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I hope it never ends and we can keep talking forever and ever.
All right, Jerry. Thank you so much.